The Detroit Lions paved the way. Can the Arizona Cardinals replicate it? Let's discuss.
You are Locked On Cardinals, your daily Arizona Cardinals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Alex Clancy here. Follow me on Twitter at Clancy's Corner. Follow the podcast at Locked On AZ Cards. Thank you for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen, free wherever you get your podcast, and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, but in sports radio in Phoenix since 2011. Been hosting this lovely podcast since 2017, going on the 8th season. Thank you for being a part of my journey as I scream bloody everything out of my big dumb face for you to watch and hear. Today's episode of Locked On Cardinals is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account. Use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. So, I don't like to say, oh, I was right about that. I was right about that. I was right about that. It's just not, I don't think it's aesthetically pleasing for anybody. I think that you give your opinions. If you happen to tell the future like I did with Cliff Kingsbury, if you happen to read through all of the winning in the beginning of the 2021 season and see that nothing's changed like I did, you just kind of let things play out. Okay. The Detroit Lions, when everybody was looking at the Cleveland Browns and the Kansas City Chiefs for the Cardinals to replicate their path, to kind of come out of, I mean, the Chiefs have won. They won before Patrick Mahomes a long time ago. Alex Smith was good there, but they never really got over the hump before Patrick Mahomes got there. And then, with Baker Mayfield and Kevin Stefanski coming in, it's like, oh, well, Cleveland's lost forever and now they're winning. So that's maybe the blueprint. And I discussed that. You dabble in that and it makes sense. But for me, right when the Lions traded Matthew Stafford for Jared Goff, and they got a bunch of draft picks, and they signed Dan Campbell to be head coach, it's like, okay, what is going on over here? Because it doesn't make rational sense. Dan Campbell, although being an interim, I think in 2015 with Miami as head coach, was a tight end coach in New Orleans, played the game for a while, but biting people's kneecaps? Jared Goff, even though I've been a Jared Goff truther forever, I always thought that he just wasn't cool enough for Sean McVay. I just think that's what it was. It just didn't fit because he didn't pass the test, which I don't really understand. And Jared Goff has proven me right with that, getting a massive extension and taking the Lions to, a level that haven't seen in a long time with that organization. But you look at it and it's like, okay. Then they draft Penny Sewell. Okay. Then they draft Aiden Hutchinson. Okay. And then I'm going to go down, their drafts have been excellent. Dave Sears was over there. It's like, okay, this is something that the Cardinals should be looking towards. Now, it's the wrong head coach. It's the wrong GM. If they ever do get it right, that's the team. That's the team they should be mapping after for a couple specific reasons. One, there are very few organizations in the history of the NFL that have lost as many times as the Cardinals and the Lions have. Sure, you've got your Barry Sanders years, you've got your Calvin Johnson years, absolutely. But it's been bad, and it's been bad forever. The Cardinals have been bad, and it's been bad forever. Sure, you've got your Larry Fitzgeralds and your Anquan Boldin and your Kurt Warner, you're making the Super Bowl and the NFC Championship game where they lost by 100 to Carolina. You got your Patrick Petersons. You got it. I get it. Bruce Arians' years, I get it. More than not, though, it's been bad. Perpetually. Dysfunction, Bidwells not knowing what the hell they're doing, pretending like they do, running the organization. This is the phrase that I say a lot every day, as you'll know this is, if this is your first listen to Locked On Cardinals, thank you. They run the organization like they've won 10 Super Bowls. And the Cardinals have not won 10 Super Bowls. Spoiler, I'm not sure if you know that or not, but Michael Bidwell for a long time ran it like he did. It's like a poor man, Jerry Jones. He was like, no, I got this, guys. I'm going to handle this. Look at all of our trophies. I know it's rudimentary. I know it doesn't make sense, but look at the trophies. Trophies weren't there. So it just bred dysfunction, a culture that was as transplanted as the city in which they play in Phoenix. When you can't draft and you got to bring in veterans from other teams, it's hard to piecemeal that together into a culture that has any sort of momentum. With the Lions, and why I'm bringing Matt Derry of Locked On Lions on today, is to discuss what he saw firsthand over the last handful of years specifically that showed the massive pivot from dysfunction to what's set to be perpetual relevance. And in the NFL, it is so difficult to be relevant every year. It's so difficult to not go through a dark age of a decade where you're terrible. If you can't draft and you can't coach, you've got no shot. And I've looked at, there are some very, very paralleled similarities between the Cardinals and the Lions. So I'm excited to get Matt on. Cardinals playing the Lions week 3 at home during the murderer's row that they have during the first 2 months of the season. I'll be doing a full season discussion prediction, 3 games per show. That'll be the next 2 weeks, starting Wednesday of next week, and then we'll be up into camp and ready to rock. So Matt Derry, Locked On Lions, going to join me here in a minute. The parallels between 2 perennially losing organizations. One is a couple years ahead of the curve than the Cardinals, and we're starting to see the proof of concept that I've talked about since the beginning of last season come to light in the Motor City. Can the Cardinals do the same thing in an effort to rival the Lions in the NFC for years to come? Matt Derry, Locked On Lions, joins me next. Locked On Cardinals, your team every day. This episode of Locked On Cardinals is brought to you by the Game Time app. I always talk about how I wish baseball was my favorite sport because it's like March Madness all day long for 6 months. If baseball is your favorite sport, the Game Time app is where you need to go immediately. Because here's the thing. There's a lot of things. They've got flash sales. They've got zone deals. You can buy tickets up until an hour after specific events, and not just baseball, but like comedy shows, concerts, things like that. But for baseball specifically, you can sit anywhere you want. You want to sit in the outfield, left field. They got some sluggers on the team that you love that pull the ball. You want to maybe catch a home run, sit in left field. Upper bleachers on the right side, if you want to just catch a foul ball. The beauty of the Game Time app is they give you the vantage point of the tickets you're about to buy before you buy them in a panoramic view. So you can see exactly what you're going to be looking at during the game if you buy those tickets. It takes the absolute guesswork out of buying tickets. Download the Game Time app, create an account. Use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. I've been waiting to do this show for a year, almost 2 years, because you kind of had to wait to see what was going to happen with Steve Keim and Cliff Kingsbury, and if Michael Bidwell was finally going to realize you can't run an organization like that if you want to win. And this show is finally here. Going to get Matt Derry here in a second from Locked On Lions. I'm stoked. I'm stoked for these next 2 segments because we're going to get to see into the future, hopefully. Hopefully Miss Cleo is joining me today. I mean, that's really what you hope for the Cardinals as they go into the first year with actual expectations with the new regime. Thanks for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen. Free wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? You have to turn down the volume with all that damn shouting. Well, make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 streaming channel programmed to you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The aforementioned Matt Derry, Locked On Lions, joining me here. One of my, dude, when they played years ago, when the Cardinals were bad and the Lions were bad with Matt Stafford, 3 years in a row, it was like every year, Death Taxes and Lions, Cardinals. And now to see where they've come, pretty much from the 2020 draft on, is miraculous. We'll talk about it in the next segment. Talk to me about what it's been like covering the Lions over the last 10 years. The Matthew Stafford years, and then the transition. We'll get to the good stuff in the next segment.
First off, Alex, great to be with you. If you recall, years ago when we were doing those shows, we had a blast because we didn't even talk football. We were just screwing around. Yeah. The teams were so bad. Well, yeah. There was a Josh Rosen game mixed in there when the Cardinals beat the Lions, I believe. But anyway, it's been an unbelievable run. I've been doing the show since 2016, since we started the network, and just the chaos that ensued during the Patricia and Quinn era was just like nothing I've seen before in this town. And I've been here almost 30 years. Now it's just, like you said, It's stability, it's consistency, and it's good people at the top. Sheila Ford Hamp, the owner, is the daughter of William Clay Ford Sr. and, of course, Martha Firestone Ford. When W.C. Ford, Mr. Ford, rest in peace, ran this team, he wanted to win, but he just didn't know how to do it. And he didn't do it right. And he hired his buddies, and he had GMs for a long time. There weren't football people. Then he passed away. The mom took it over. She did all right. But again, what Sheila has done is she's hired a really good general manager. She's given him resources, hired a really good coach, given him resources, and stayed out of the way. And when you have that protocol and you've got Chris Spielman near the top, who's an unbelievable figure to be in the front office and doesn't want to be a GM, doesn't want to get in the way of anybody, just wants the Lions to do well and wants everybody pulling on the same string. It's incredible, and it's working.
Dery speaks on Twitter. Absolutely. Because that's Michael Bidwell. His dad passed away. Michael Bidwell takes over. He hires his friends and Steve Keim. And then, with Cliff Kingsbury, the debacle, the worst thing that happened to the Cardinals was them starting 7-0 and 10-2 in 2021. That got him an extension. Then it got him fired after Kyler Murray tore his ACL. Brad Holmes, GM of the Detroit Lions, lo and behold, back around in college scouting.
Yeah.
He was with the Rams for 7 years, 2013 to 2020, then came over and took over for the Lions. The drafts have looked very different since drafting Jeff Okudah at 3. And when you look at that, it's like Monty Ossenfort. Scouting for 20 years. Won Super Bowls. Brad Holmes was there with the Rams when they were making Super Bowls. Like every other team in the NFL, aside from a handful, like Tampa Bay before they got Tom Brady, the Browns, like bad teams forever. Everybody else seems to get it. At some point, it's like, oh, things need to change. And not just, the definition of insanity. I almost just got insanity tattooed on my forehead over the last, decade, because it's been the same thing.
Yeah.
Matthew Stafford before that trade, it was like, okay, this isn't working. It's like the Mike Tomlin thing. It's like, you know what? It's good enough, but it's not going to get you to the next level. It's time for a fresh start. When that trade happened, which was pretty much the precipice of all of this changing, what was going through your head? And did you think trading for Jared Goff would ever amount to this?
I liked the deal because of the draft picks. It wasn't like I was sitting there going, oh, great, they got Goff. I figured Goff would be a placeholder. But I thought the amount of draft capital that they got, and like you said, the way that Brad Holmes has been drafting, whether it's Penei Sewell, Aiden Hutchinson, whomever at the top, you figured, all right, this is going to be a good thing. And it was time for Stafford to go. Never did I think in a million years that Jared Goff would play as well as he's played. He'd be embraced in this town to the point where when I walked into that stadium at Ford Field for the playoff game last year against the Rams, 2 hours before the game, 2 hours before the game, and the crowd is chanting Jared Goff. And it started these chants that now go on at Tigers games, Red Wings games, Pistons games, Michigan State, heck, Grand Rapids Griffins of the AHL. They're screaming Jared Goff. They're doing a Jared Goff chant at high school games. At graduations, I see these videos on TikTok and it's crazy. So it's pretty cool. He has played very, very well. And similar to Monty, I think with Brad Holmes, there's a level of ferocity in the draft, some chance taking, which is cool. Holmes has done it. Monty's done it. And so it's working here in Detroit. Obviously you guys are a little bit behind, but it is working here. And now it's time that I think they want to take that next step. And we're actually talking about it all summer on Locked On Lions. We're talking Super Bowl. We're talking, can this team get there? And it's not even a could anymore. It's maybe a should.
Yeah, and it's fascinating. Like the Jahmyr Gibbs pick was looked at as, what the hell are they doing? You know what?
Right.
Lions are going to lion. First of all, here's the thing. If you want a player in the middle of the first round, you don't have a pick until the second round. He's not going to be there when you pick again. Get your guy. Like, I get that. But the foundation that was built that allowed for that pick to happen was the draft, the 2 years before that, where you get Penei Sewell in the first, you get Aiden Hutchinson and Jamison Williams in the first round the year before, you get Kirby Joseph in the third. It's the Marvin Harrison Jr. pick for the Cardinals. It's a little bit earlier. It's not exactly the same, but the Cardinals have filled out this roster with young talent so quickly, comparatively speaking to what Steve Keim did, where it was a slow drip if the faucet was on at all, that you've got to build your roster with skill position players too, and it looks to have worked with Jahmyr Gibbs. Now, as we pivot to the good times, okay, and you've been there for a long time, you've mentioned, the Cardinals and the Lions have been bad forever, okay? Did you see a world where this could actually be possible before it happened. Like, and this isn't like, oh, woe is us. We get to talk sports for a living, man. Okay, so we win no matter what. But like, did you ever see a world where the Lions would be competing for a Super Bowl every year?
No, of course not. And nobody did, because there's just not been a legacy of this. There's not been a consistent base, and they hadn't won 2 playoff games. Obviously they did it this past year, but before that, the last time they won 2 playoff games was 1957, Alex. So, I was right. I mean, it's insane. So to see where it's gone now, to have good people in place, the amount of assistant coaches that have stayed. I mean, Ben Johnson should have been head coach 2 years ago, and everybody knew it. Turned down opportunities. Last year, it's like, all right, best OC in the league. He's got to go now. There's better options for him. He's not going to go to Carolina, but he'll go here. He'll go there. Chargers, Raiders, whatever. No, stays again. And it's like Aaron Glenn's back. Hank Fraley, the offensive line coach, has had overtures from other teams. He's staying. Antoine Randall L. Mark Brunell, as quarterback's coach, could be an OC somewhere right now. Yeah. They all want to stay and work for this man, Dan Campbell, who empowers them and gets out of the way. How many head coaches would allow for all of this talk about Ben Johnson? And Dan Campbell loves it. He's like, yeah, this is my guy, and he's our OC. He's great. Give him all the credit. It's a refreshing culture shift. They had to get rid of a lot of the past and a lot of talk about the past. You're right. They mended fences with Barry Sanders after they kind of screwed him on his retirement money. Same with Calvin Johnson. And they're just doing it right. And it also helps, Alex, that this town hockey team hasn't been in the playoffs in a while. The basketball team is an embarrassment. Baseball team is so mediocre. So it's almost like the Lions are the saviors. Whereas it used to be the opposite. And it's refreshing.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Detroit basketball is it's a far cry from what it was.
Yeah.
The Drew Petzing thing's interesting. I wasn't actually going to bring this up, but let's do this and then we'll pivot to actually what has actually worked in, chronological order that has made it happen in Detroit. And as we start to see the rumblings from the Cardinals, if they'll follow suit, the Drew Petzing name he's going to be a name probably next year. Like that offense that they ran with Joshua Dobbs for over half the season. They were top 5 in rushing the last 5 weeks when everybody knew all they could do was run the ball. Kyler Murray came back. Like he's going to get looks. He's not going to be as hot of a name unless the Cardinals win 10 or 11 games this year. He's not going to be as hot of a name as Ben Johnson, but answer me this. And because you just said Dan Campbell, I call it like a cabinet. Like Jonathan Gannon's the president and Dan Campbell's the president. And then he's got his cabinet mates. They're kind of running it all together. Was it he didn't want the Washington job? He wasn't going to get the Charger job. What was it that like, what was the pie piece percentage wise? That he wanted to come back or that he didn't want to go to New England anyways?
Well, I think the Washington job was the one, and I kind of misspoke before, and you bailed me out here. It was the Commanders number one. I mean, I was just thinking of openings off the top of my head. Obviously, the Raiders kept Antonio, and the Chargers did the right thing in getting Jim Harbaugh. We've seen what he could do here in the state of Michigan. He's wacky, but he's damn good. But yeah, it was the Washington job. I had heard November when they started putting all the pieces in place. There are a couple of front office people that are in Washington now that were in Detroit. I think Ben Johnson was the guy. The stories out there about him having they were flying in to meet him and Aaron Glenn, and he blew them off on the airplane and told them, don't even come. I'm not going to interview. I'm out. And I don't know about all that. I don't think he wanted that job. And I think they put that story out there to make it like they didn't want him. But I just think the bottom line is he'll wait until it's really the right opportunity. And right now he's getting a chance to work again with Jared Goff. With those backs, you mentioned Gibbs before, David Montgomery. Watch out for a kid named Sione Vaki that they drafted in the late rounds this year that's going to be on the field somewhere. And it could be at running back on third downs. All the weapons that they have, Laporta, you mentioned before. Amon-Ra St. Brown's as good as any receiver in the league. So there's a lot to work with. And I think Ben Johnson's like, hey, unfinished business. We were 30 minutes from the Super Bowl. And I know Cardinal fans were rooting for us against the Niners, just like most out west. So that was bad, but it wasn't like Ben Johnson cost them. I mean, Josh Reynolds dropped a couple balls. Campbell made some interesting decisions. But yeah, I would say for Ben Johnson, his name will be back out there again next year. And it is similar. I know, Drew does a good job out there, but again, it's almost like, I'm glad you're having me on. You guys are kind of trying to match what the Lions have done with that blueprint. I think that's exactly what you should do.
Yeah. Matt Derry, Locked on Lions. Absolutely. How quick can 2 good drafts act as jet fuel for a losing team? I'm going to ask that to Matt. I feel like it's a pretty clear answer, and I just want to hear them come out of his mouth because the Cardinals are in the midst of experiencing that, hopefully, as well. Locked on Cardinals, your team every day. This episode of Locked on Cardinals is brought to you by Bird Gang Travel Club. Bird Gang Travel Club provides the best and only fan travel experience for Cardinals road games. We're talking anywhere from 50 to 500 fans on a given trip. Buffalo week 1, Green Bay week 6, Miami week 8. They've got seats rows 5 or closer in both Buffalo and Orchard Park or South Beach in Miami. Packages include top-notch hotel stays for 3 or 4 nights, lower-level game tickets currently, again, row 5 or closer in Buffalo and Miami. Parties each night with open bar and apps. Everybody loves, open bar. Unique fan tours of Lambeau Field and Niagara Falls, souvenir trip patch, State 48, trip shirts, and more. And Tyler Vasquez of Bird Gang Travel Club extended the time frame to be able to receive a signed Paris Johnson Jr. mini helmet for anyone in your package. Just got to sign up by Sunday, by the end of the month. Do it. Visit birdgang.com for merch, Bird Gang Travel Club for tickets. They got payment plans too, man. If you don't want to throw all the cheese in the beginning, you can pay it off over a couple months. Use code LOCKEDON to receive a bonus signed mystery mini helmet or football from a current Cardinals player or alumni while supplies last. birdgangtravelclub.com. Matt Derry, Locked on Lions. Alex Clancy, Locked on Cardinals. Follow me on Twitter at Clancy's Corner _. Follow him at Dery Speaks. Maybe one day, Elon will give me my Twitter back so I can actually be relevant on Twitter again.
What's going on with that?
I had it since 2011, and I didn't sign up for premium, and I had the 2FA over text message, so I would get a text message. Then they removed that for non-premium members, and I didn't have it next to, with any app, so I can't authenticate that I'm me, which is fantastic. Please go to the YouTube channel, search Locked on Arizona Cardinals, search Locked on Lions, hit that subscribe button, turn notifications on. 2 of the most fun teams in the NFC and NFL. Their hosts are split screen right now. So, Matt, 2019. It was 2019, right? Jeff Okuda, where it was.
Yes.
No, it was 2020. Sorry.
The next year. Yep.
So when Jeff Okuda, DeAndre Swift. Okay, so Jeff Okuda, it was a question mark. Are they going to take a quarterback there to back up Jared Goff? Ended up taking the corner who, had injuries and hasn't really amounted to much. Obviously not with the Lions anymore. And then it went. Penny Sewell, Aiden Hutchinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, Sam Laporta, Brian Branch in the same draft. And then you take 2 of the top DBs in the first 2 rounds of Terrian Arnold and Enos Rakestraw. Talk to me about, and obviously amon-ra St. Brown thrown in there in the 4th round. Talk to me about how quick a roster can change overnight where rookies can play meaningful snaps and actually be good right out the gate. What it looks like and how quick it expedites a rebuild.
I think it's quick, but I will say this. I think 2 things stand out about the draft. Number one, it was a couple of years ago where there was a lot of people saying the Lions should draft Malik Willis, and that was laughable. And now we see why the Lions were right not to go anywhere near him in either rounds 1 or 2. I mean, there were people saying the Lions should take Malik Willis at 2 and not Aiden Hutchinson. It's like, you got to be kidding me.
Yikes.
And so that was number one. Number 2, it was really this past year's draft, the 2023 draft, in year 3 of Holmes, where he took Gibbs, Jack Campbell, Brian Branch, and Sam Laporta, the first 4 picks, 2 in the first, 2 in the second. Genius, absolutely genius, and absolute genius. And that really kind of just springboarded the squad, because here's Laporta, a 2nd round tight end, bunched in with some others, Kincaid, the kid in the Raiders, Michael Mayer.
Yep.
And Laporta was clearly the best tight end, and
Yeah.
now is one of the best tight ends in the game after 1 year. Brian Branch is a monster at either nickel corner, or there's talk they're going to move him to safety this year. Laporta, Jack Campbell's a solid middle linebacker. He's not ready yet to be a star, but he doesn't hurt you. And yeah, Gibbs at 12. I mean, I was guilty of it on the night of the draft. What are they doing taking running back at 12 and a middle linebacker at 18. This isn't 1986 anymore. And I got killed for it, and I deserve it. I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs was explosive. So yes, though that third draft with the first 4, incredible, but it is about getting it right and getting it right early. I mean, Penei Sewell's arguably the best right tackle in the game. Took him at 7 or whatever it was. Aiden Hutchinson at 2. Imagine if the Jags had taken him and they got Trayvon Walker instead. Wouldn't it be the same impact? Yeah. And these guys all fit what they want to do. Not only are they really good football players, but like Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes they want football junkies, guys, locker room leaders, guys that are starving to play. That's what Hutchinson is. Sewell, oh my gosh, is he unbelievable as a leader and just a badass at 23. It just, they fit and they're good. And so that's just the coup de grace right there. So I with the Cardinals, I mean, it's going to take time, just like it does. Anything does. The quarterback's got to be there too. That's the other thing. We could sit here and talk about drafts and all this stuff and culture, but Goff has played really, really well. Mm-hmm. And if Kyler Murray can get back to playing at that level that everybody thought he'd be at, it just eases everything else around him. And that's been a huge key here. Nobody thought in a million years that Goff would maybe be better than Stafford. You can make that argument.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, obviously, being able to hand the ball off 30 times a game helps any quarterback. And then all that does is it opens up play action. It opens up, a one-on-one coverage on the outside. And like the beautiful part, and I will pivot to the similarities roster-wise and we'll end with Kyler and Jared Goff comparison here in a specific way. But could you tell me what Amon-Ra Brown's voice sounds like? Not a diva wide receiver. Aiden Hutchinson went to Michigan, not a diva, defensive end / edge rusher. It's all about the uniform and the helmet, which is a wild thing to say in the NFL because it's like you've always got one. You've got one that's going to be the outspoken guy or, whatever. The only reason I know what Amon-Ra Brown's voice sounds like is because Equanimous and him had an interview around the playoffs with his parents and how smart all of them are, and they speak 38 languages and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Amon-Ra St. Brown out of USC, you got to get lucky also. And lucky, you scout, sure, okay? You can't say, yep, knew that, knew he was going to be worth a monster contract, knew he was going to be an absolute target monster and number stat stuffer. No, come on. You got to get lucky also. You got to find diamonds in the rough that actually pan out. And I think that without Amon-Ra St. Brown panning out in the middle rounds, this is a wildly different team. So the ball has to bounce your way. And I feel like my dad always says, do good things and good things will happen.
Yeah.
And it's not karma. It's not woo-woo stuff. It's like, just do the right stuff. And balls tend to bounce your way when you continue to do the right things.
Well, and here's the other thing. The Bidwells have spent. They have not, I don't think not smartly sometimes, but what are we got to go back to the DeAndre Hopkins stuff, I guess, but like
usually via trade and not people that are drafted.
But taking on the contract because they had to have a stud on the outside. Whereas with the Lions, you take a 4th rounder that was bypassed by every team and was the 20th taken receiver that year or whatever it was. And St. Brown can name all the guys in front of him. Yeah. Then you've got him for 3 years at like no money. It's huge for the cap. Now is when the real important stuff happens for the Lions because Goff, Sewell, and St. Brown are all very highly paid. Goff's now in the 50s. Sewell's making 30 or 23 and St. Brown's making 30. So now it's like, now we got to really manage the cap. But the Lions haven't really, and this is for your listeners too and viewers, Alex, the Lions have not broken the bank in free agency. Could they have gone out and gotten Danielle Hunter this year? Yes. Brian Burns, could they have traded for him? Sure. They spent on DJ Reader about $13.5 million, but they didn't go out and get one of these edges that's making 25 to 30. Right. They instead said, all right, Marcus Davenport, 1-year deal, $6.5 million. Let's see how it goes. Playing for a contract. Kevin Zeitler to replace Jonah Jackson at guard. Jonah's going to go to the Rams and make 17. Doesn't deserve that kind of money. Good player, probably overpaid. Lions say, bye, let him walk, bring in Zeitler on a 1-year, pay him $6 to $7 million, and do it that way. So they'll keep their own, sign their own at a big price. But the outside guys, that's not been Brad Holmes' thing so far.
Yeah. And the Cardinals, Jonah Williams, 2-year, $30 million, very team-friendly deal. Bringing over Kazir White, bringing over Mac Wilson, like these Sean Murphy Bunting, same kind of thing. You don't have to spend a lot of money in free agency. It's boring, and boring usually wins. Yeah. So that's something, Matt, like we're ringing true here. And we're going to go a little bit long. Sorry, Ross. But like the comparison with Jared Goff and Kyler Murray, it's not gameplay. They couldn't be more different in gameplay on the field. It's big question marks surrounding them, and can they execute? Can they get there? And it's Kyler Murray's turn. Like, this is the best roster maybe he's ever had in his life. This is the best offensive line he's had since coming to the NFL. The defense is still lacking, but there's a lot of young guys that are going to be hungry. They're going to get a lot of meaningful snaps, especially in the cornerback position. This is the year where Kyler Murray gets back. He's 50-1 on FanDuel to win MVP right now.
Yeah, I saw that.
Jared Goff, I think, he has shorter odds than that, and rightfully so. But, like, this is the year. Jared Goff had his year the last 18 months or so, the last year and a half. They won a couple games. They almost made it to the Super Bowl. It's Kyler Murray's time. Do you think, from what you've seen from afar, with what you saw from Jared Goff, that Kyler Murray has the ability in this new ecosystem with functionality present to be able to take that step?
Yes, absolutely. Because I think, like you said, your head coach is pretty good, and everybody saw it last year. I mean, that roster was garbage, and they were in every game. And so taking that Goff step, like Murray, it's about coaching, it's about work ethic, what you have around you, and the O-line, like you said, and I don't know this like you do, but it sounds like the Cardinals O-line is finally intact. Mm-hmm. When Goff's able to look out there and see Decker last year, Decker, Jackson, Ragnow, Glasgow, and Sewell, and 3 of the 5 guys there are as good as anybody at their position. And Taylor Decker, I think, is an underrated left tackle. He's been around 10 years. Ragnow's a monster at center, and Sewell's a beast at right tackle. Now, this year, Glasgow just slides over to left guard. You bring in Kevin Zeitler, who, by the way, was a Pro Bowler last year. You win up front, and then Goff can just do his thing. I mean, people said, why would Jared Goff get paid $50 million a year? He can't move. So, doesn't have to. Move a little, but if you got a nice short passing game, the play action, like you said, the running game, and a good culture and a good offensive line, and everybody feels good about it. Absolutely. If Kyler Murray is getting that same type of coaching, not that he was, and he's got more athleticism, obviously, than Goff. I think the sky's the limit. I think it's a good situation. But again, St. Brown doesn't need the ball. He's not going to complain. So when you have a number one receiver that sets that tone, that's pretty good. And the Lions defense is fine. It's not great, but really that offense, especially indoors, really hums when they're going. Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. Matt Derry, Locked On Lions. Jared Goff. And
by the way, Alex, I might interrupt you. I have the Lions. I don't want to do wins and losses and play the schedule game, but we have to do it because we have to do shows every day.
Yeah.
I did have the Lions. I'm just looking at it. I did have the Lions losing in Arizona. I think the Cardinals are going to be better than people think.
Me too. We'll see.
Never easy to fly out west. Lions play 3 of their first 4 at home. So going out west and losing to the Cardinals, I don't think would be a big shock to me.
We'll be doing crossover Thursday, week 3 of the 2024 NFL season. Before you know it, Matt Derry, Locked On Lions. If you want to see what the future of the Arizona Cardinals could look like, check out Matt Derry, Locked On Lions. They're 2 years ahead. That's exactly where the Cardinals are striving for. Jared Goff, Amon-Ra, St. Brown, Sam Laporta, David Montgomery, Kyler Murray, Marvin Harrison Jr., Trey McBride, James Conner. I mean, it's pretty dictionary definition-ish of what the Cardinals have. So let's hope that they can replicate and maybe expound upon what the Lions have done over the last couple of years. Matt Derry, Locked On Lions, thanks for joining me, man. Alex Clancy, Locked On Cardinals. Remember, without you, there is no me. I'll talk to you tomorrow.